That was a tough one, Chicago Bears fans. The Chicago Bears are now 4-3. They lose on a Hail Mary, 18-15 in the final seconds. Yeah, that one was tough. That was a tough game, pretty much from start to finish for the Bears. Even though they kind of found their groove in that fourth quarter. Unfortunately, I guess it was a little too late, as the Commanders hit a 52-yard Hail Mary from Jane Daniels to Noah Brown. I'm the publisher here at the Bear Report, Zach Pearson. I'm going to break this down. Should have Usaid Koshal joining me here in a few minutes. But yeah, that was a tough one, Bears fans. And kind of let's get right back. Let's kind of get right into it. It's fresh. Like I said, the Bears are 4-3 on the season now. This was a game coming off the bye week in which I felt like it was a prove-it game for the Bears. They're 4-2. They're in a tough division. They have some tough divisional games coming up in 6 of the final 8 weeks of the season. And this is a game against the NFC East leading Washington Commanders. It's number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, against number 2 overall pick, Jane Daniels. A chance to come out after the bye and prove that, you can be a legit contender in the NFC and that you belong. Minnesota lost to the Rams. The Lions took care of business against the Titans. And the Packers, pulled another one out, against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tip your hat to them. But this was a tough one, man. And I just kind of felt like the Bears weren't prepared coming out of this one. A couple 3-and-outs to start the game. They've been really bad on opening drives this year, have not scored on the opening drive in all 7 games. My colleague Kevin Fishbane of The Athletic actually had a tweet from the first quarter of games this year where the Bears have just been really bad. They've scored 3 points in week 2. They've scored 7 points in week 5, and that's it. 10 points in the first quarter in 8 games this year. That is brutal. And it was another slow start, but on the positive side, the defense was really good for pretty much all the game except for that Hail Mary. I mean, Washington was getting into Chicago territory at one point. Commanders had 18 plays in Bears territory or near the red zone. I forgot what the stat was, to just 2 or 3 for the Bears. And the defense, while Jane Daniels was banged up while he was on his third string left tackle, the defense held them to field goal attempts. And that's why it was, 9-0 game. That's why it was a 12-0 game. And the Bears were kind of just hanging around. And then when the offense finally found their groove, they get the long touchdown run from DeAndre Swift. They get the ball. They go down to the 1-yard line. And on 3rd and goal, hand it off to Doug Kramer, and it's fumbled. They overcome that. They get down. They score. They get the 2-point conversion. You're like, oh my gosh, they're gonna pull this one out. This is one of those games where the Bears are gonna pull it out, and just like that, the rug is just swept right underneath you, and it's a tough one. And I want to talk about a couple things, but mainly going back to my point, I think the Bears have a bit of a coaching problem, and I think there's some issues with coaching. I think that the team didn't look as prepared as they could have today. There were some dumb penalties, 2 pre-snap penalties on the offensive line on one drive that killed it. They went from 3rd and 2 and a completion to DJ Moore to an illegal formation and a false start, incomplete pass, and then a punt in the second half. That was brutal. Daniel Hardy, a bad special teams penalty. Tyreek Stevenson, a bad unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, going after the face mask or punching the face mask of a player. I think it was Terry McLaurin. They just weren't prepared, and the coaching today was just not very good. And I look at a couple things here. You look at, well, first off, okay, let's start with the play to Doug Kramer. You're moving the football. You're finally getting some momentum. This is probably the best drive your offense has put together, aside from the long DeAndre Swift play. And on 3rd and goal from the 1, you opt to hand the ball off to Doug Kramer, and it's just a nightmare. It's fumbled. The Commanders pick it up. Luckily, he was ruled down by contact. Otherwise, that would have been ball game right there. But yeah, just, And I get it. People can say, well, if it works, we're not complaining. In my opinion, that's one of those, quote unquote, too cute plays that we see with Matt Nagy. And fortunately for Matt Nagy, when he did those type of plays, the extra cute plays, they would work for him with the Santa sleigh, the big man touchdown. I just don't like getting too cute there. You got Roschon in the game. Run him in from 1 yard. QB sneak it if you can. You have 2 plays to get 1 yard. I don't like handing it off to the second string center. That's nothing against Doug Kramer. He's asked to take a handoff, which I'm sure they only do in practice. Never taken a handoff in a game. And you want him to take a handoff, go forward and try to get in. I would have been, more pleased with running behind Doug Kramer and getting Roschon the ball, which actually worked. Roschon punched in from 1 yard out and their next drive to take the lead. But to me, you just can't make that play call there. And yeah, that's Shane Waldron's play. But as a head coach, Matt Eberflus to step in. You can't do that. And the crazy thing is, I don't know if anyone heard Matt Eberflus. He was asked about it. And Jason Leisure tweeted it out. Eberflus said, I know there's going to be a lot of questions about the Doug Kramer, and reporters that were there asked and Eberflus said he was on board with Shane Waldron's logic and handing it off to an offensive lineman with the game on the line. It's a 1 yard play. Yeah, but it's gotta work, and you gotta make sure you get the ball into the end zone. You can't just, hand it off to Doug Kramer and pray. Like, that's just crazy, especially with the game on the line. You have all the momentum. Caleb Williams got you down there. The run game got you down there, and you're going away from it. That's just insane to me. I'm sorry. Actually, you say Koshal's in here. Let's just bring him in because we're going to get right into this conversation. You say, first off, it's a tough loss, but how I've started this is the Bears came out flat. They had a bye week. They did not look prepared. Too many just dumb penalties. I talked about the 2 special teams penalties, the personal foul or whatever, unsportsmanlike conduct on Tyreek Stevenson. We'll get to that, actually. There's something else with Tyreek Stevenson that's a little worrisome, that I saw after the game. But, what do you think about the coaching performance?
It was just all around incredibly bad because, you're, I think, talking about a team that clearly kind of came into this thing. You knew this thing was going to be a heavyweight fight, but then again, it's like you had 15 days to kind of go ahead and prepare for this thing. And the reality is this is, say what you want about the DeAndre Swift 56-yard touchdown. Say what you want about the kind of comeback drive by Caleb Williams there. Say what you want about the Doug Kramer play call. The Achilles heel of this Chicago Bears team has just been the inability to establish any sort of momentum against good, solid defenses. And this is something that if you go back and you start looking at weeks 2 and 3, for example, you even look back at the early portions of that week 1 game. The Bears, unfortunately, on offense have just not been good enough. And so I'm not surprised at all that they kind of went out and lost this game because as soon as, you start to see the way that the offense doesn't put up any points in the first half, you kind of see the way that Caleb Williams is struggling. In real time, you start to look and you see that, okay, well, drives are literally lasting like a minute and 30 seconds. And it just shows me that, from a coaching staff's perspective, well, you coached the game conservatively. You weren't as aggressive as you probably should have been. You tried to loosen Caleb Williams up, but he didn't necessarily go ahead and kind of make all the plays that you maybe would have wanted him to. And then the reality of the situation is that kind of leads to 0 points. And every time you're building momentum, it's just something happening. If this was weeks 1, 2, and 3, and this team was this sloppy, I'd be like, all right, cool. But then we're sitting in the end of October right now. You're sitting in week 8, week 9, and it's like the same stuff that was an issue in the first and second week of September is now an issue right now. So it's just like, what's the trajectory for this team? They're only going to be as good as the coaching staff allows them to be.
Yeah, and you know what they were? Those first couple of weeks of coaching staff was not very good. They were making these mistakes. They have 10 special teams penalties, which right now is second most in the NFL. A couple leaders have 11, and I've asked Richard Hightower that on back-to-back weeks that they've had availability in Chicago. What's going on with that? And he says he's coaching up his players, but you got Daniel Hardy, who's had 4 penalties all season long. All 4 of them are on special teams. Like, this is stuff you have to clean up. This is stuff that, like you said, You're making these mistakes in weeks 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. When you get to October, November, and you want to be a team that is considered a contender or can make a run or just even make a run to that, in the hunt, even if you don't make the playoffs, be right there. Like, you have to clean this up. And I tweeted this out, and I probably misphrased this. I should have probably phrased it better because there were some good points to this tweet, but it's been high and low all season long for this Bears coaching staff. It started low against Tennessee Titans. It continued low against the Houston Texans. You go to Indianapolis, it's low. It gets higher. It starts to build up in the next couple of weeks. They get 3 wins in a row. But look at the 3 teams that they played, the Rams, the Panthers, the Jaguars. Those, the Rams are probably going to be better than what most think, but they also got Puka back and they also got Cooper Kupp back. They didn't play the Bears with those guys. Those were 3 of the worst defenses, and the Bears took advantage, and the coaching was good for the most part. But now you play a team that's a contender, and you're right back down to a low. And I think they have some coaching issues, and I think there's, some questions about Matt Eberflus. You look at the Washington Commanders. They have Dan Quinn. Might have failed in Atlanta. Took a defensive coordinator job in Dallas. They always had one of the better defenses in the league. Granted, they'd fail when it came to the playoffs, but they always had one of the better defenses in the league. He hires Cliff Kingsbury. And nothing against Jane Daniels. I think Jane Daniels is going to be fantastic. They're not asking Jane Daniels to do a whole lot, to be fair. And he's hitting the big throws. Again, nothing against Jane Daniels. He's going to be a star in this league, I believe. But like, they're tailoring their offense to him. And that coaching staff had the Washington Commanders prepared. They had them. The Commanders were prepared, and they did it with Jane Daniels, who has, a rib injury. And it's just frustrating. And that kind of takes me here. You look at that Hail Mary, man, there's a lot. Everyone wants to blame the Hail Mary. I get it. Like, that setup, and Matt Bowen tweeted out like what a typical NFL setup to defend a Hail Mary is. There's a lot you can pull back. I get that Hail Mary. Let's look at the plays leading up to it. You have 1st and goal. The Bears have 1st and goal, trying to take the lead, right? They're down, whatever. They need a touchdown. Okay, I'm pulling up the playlist. What did they do on 1st and goal? They threw the football, and it was incomplete. Okay, so they throw the football incomplete. There's 31 seconds left. Okay, you run it, you score. I guess, yeah, you can make that argument. Okay, there's 27 seconds left. Whatever. Roschon Johnson scores. Washington has 1 timeout. Washington got the ball 19 seconds left at the 24. They missed a pass over the middle to Zach Ertz. Took about 7 seconds off the clock. They hit Zach Ertz for an 11-yard gain. They get it down to 6 seconds on the clock. After they threw it to Terry McLaurin, because they called the timeout, they threw it to Terry McLaurin. They got to the Washington 48. The Bears should never have let that play happen. Like, you guard the sideline. You have no timeouts. Guard the sideline. Under no circumstances can you have that happen to get that. That's the play to me. When they hit that play, I said that I have a really bad feeling about this. Like, something bad's going to happen. They're in range for a Hail Mary. And, then the Hail Mary, rushing 3-4. TJ Edwards is a spy. Montez Sweat's not in the game. And granted, he was questionable with a shin injury. I think you got to put him out there. I'm sorry. That you got to put him out there. Also, the Commanders did not take a timeout. They didn't have any timeouts. So after that throw to McLaurin with 6 seconds left or 2 seconds left, whatever it was, he got out of bounds. They went up there. Yeah, 2 seconds left. They went up there and they ran a play. Matt Eberflus had what? 2 timeouts, 3 timeouts, I think. Like, call a timeout and make sure you get your defense set. That was just crazy to me. Having TJ Edwards as the spy, and then that's just, I'm sorry. To me, that's coaching.
You're right. It certainly is coaching, because when we start to examine a lot of the personnel changes that were made, so the Bears put 3 down. Your best edge rusher in Montez Sweat wasn't even out there. 99 was out there, 95 was out there, so you did at least have DeMarcus Walker and Gervon Dexter. Matt Eberflus even acknowledging Caleb Williams acknowledging like, hey, we've practiced against the Hail Mary hundreds of times to be able to prepare for that specific situation. But really,
Which
to me,
makes it worse because how do you not have someone behind the guy? I mean, it's crazy to me.
see, okay, knowing what you and I see at Hallis Hall throughout camp and just the way that this team does things, I mean, I don't think I can recall a single time where I've seen the Bears practice the Hail Mary during any of these practices for all the years I've been going up to Hallis Hall. And so, when they say like, "Hey, we've been practicing this stuff," it's like, okay, well, really, how much have you been specifically practicing it? Because the reality, and to me, the analytics show it, where it's like you're not going to see a Hail Mary on every single play, especially not in that situation. But then also I look at it and I'm like, okay, so the most interesting part of this whole thing to me wasn't even Montez Sweat being out. It's why was TJ Edwards literally tasked with being that quarterback spot? It would have made more sense for you to drop TJ Edwards back, because what you effectively had was you had three guys rushing plus TJ Edwards. That's four, meaning you dropped seven into coverage. Now, the typical for a Hail Mary in terms of the numbers is you're at least rushing whatever, 2 to 3 guys. You're dropping 8 back in coverage. To me, TJ Edwards being one of the better cover linebackers in the league should not have been spying Jaden Daniels. We can sit there and talk all we want about, oh, well, the Commanders had the holding calls and all the, screenshots that are floating around social media and all that. But it's just simple. Like, the Bears were completely unprepared for this thing in a way that guys didn't even necessarily know and understand their full roles. Because, when you see Tyreek Stevenson, as the play is going on, as
Oh
Noah
my
Brown's
God.
running, he's taunting the fans. And then he just casually decides, hey, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to go ahead and run. Like, Tyreek Stevenson, for being a guy that's a second-round pick, had a solid rookie season, just has not found any sort of incredibly consistent groove this year. So this was a game where,
That's crazy.
I mean, my post-game recap is, listen, the offense sucked and found a way to lose. But you could also argue that the defense really sort of blew this one as well, especially in the moments where it mattered most. Because yes, we've seen this defense. They got the Commanders off the field after the whole Doug Kramer debacle, got the offensive ball back. Yeah, this defense has been stingy, but then also you look at everything situationally and you're like, okay, if we really get into the weeds of everything situationally, this is a team that unfortunately has not been good enough in any phase this year, because it's not like they're getting help from, the special teams unit either in terms of the return game.
I don't get why you have a spy. And I'm actually watching as we're recording this. Next Gen Stats put out their thing of put out their like dots play where they show you where the plays are at, or where the players are at. And TJ Edwards is, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20 yards away from Jaden Daniels. Then when Daniels rolls out to the left, Edwards is finally closes in on him, but there's 3 blockers right there to block TJ Edwards. It's absolutely insane. 2 guys go with 17. 29 is actually late getting there. And I know this is bad podcasting because you guys can't see this, but if you watch this, I'll retweet it. 29 is actually getting there late because he's taunting, and all the rest of the defenders cave in on the ball. It's crazy. There's no one behind. I mean, the worst part about it was he underthrew the Hail Mary. He underthrew it. Like, I don't know. It's frustrating. Jalen Johnson talked about it, actually. There's a quote from Courtney Cronin has it. And his perspective on the Hail Mary was there should never be somebody wide open the back of the end zone. Plus, we just didn't execute it well enough at the end of the day. I can't tell you who was supposed to be back there. I don't know. But at the end of the day, there should be no one open the back of the end zone. And that's bad. That's coaching. You got to, like I said, call the timeout, let your guys know what's going on back there. It's just, it's poor coaching to me. And yes, like Caleb Williams did not play well for the first 3 quarters. He did not. Not making any excuses for him. He was bad. Not all of it was his fault. The offensive line was breaking down. The rookie Kieran Amendaji, struggling out there. Missed all the offseason. They had to throw him right into the fire. I'm guessing we'll see Larry Borum back next week. But Caleb Williams was going to lead 2 go-ahead scoring drives. If they didn't hand it off to Doug Kramer, still found themselves in a position to win this game, and they lose. And it's just it's bad. But my main point in this whole thing is, yeah, there's some coaching issues with the Bears right now.
Which to me really puts into perspective what we should expect moving forward, because this to me was, at least up until the Patriots game, like this to me was the easy part of the schedule. This to me was the part of the schedule where when this thing dropped in whatever April, May, first week of June, we're kind of looking at it and we're saying, okay, how many wins can the Bears realistically rattle off? How much comfort how comfortable can Caleb Williams get with this offense before that sort of stretch run begins, where again 6 of your final 8 are division games. You've got Seattle and San Francisco sandwiched in there as well. So the big question is really, what are you going to do to kind of get this thing moving in the right direction? And to me, there's a couple things. Number one, I mean, this running game really struggled throughout the first couple weeks of the season, but we've seen in weeks 4, 5, 6, and then certainly here in week 8, the running game's been much better. Like DeAndre Swift to me does not get the recognition that he deserves. I mean, you're talking about somebody today who averaged about 7 yards a carry is what you're really looking at. So I think there has to kind of be that feed DeAndre Swift mentality. But just beyond DeAndre Swift, what you really have to, I think, do if you're the Bears is you need to figure out more ways to get Roschon Johnson regularly involved in the game. Guys like Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, like, yes, these guys have their bright moments. They've been fine. But Cole Kmet, outside of the 2-point conversion today, was noticeably invisible. And so, again, what the Bears are really toying with right now is you're trying to develop a rookie quarterback. Yes, that's should be your main focus, but you're also trying to develop an entire offense, and the entire offense has not necessarily been consistent enough. Now, irrespective of a lot of the offensive line changes, I mean, Matt Eberflus cited that as one of the reasons that they lost this game in his post-game presser. But to me, I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, you shouldn't really be using that excuse, because you decided as a coaching staff and as a front office all throughout training camp that you were going to shuffle guys around to say, well, we're going to figure out the best combination. And 8 weeks in, you still haven't figured the best combination out. Shane Waldron, too, needs to, at least to me, being an offensive guy for football, I believe that he has to kind of simplify what he's doing for the offense and basically say, all right, well, we've got our scripted plays, but what else is our quick game series that we can kind of go ahead and continue to dial up to really get the ball out of Caleb Williams' hands quickly, which he's going to have to figure out something for that, knowing that Tevin Jenkins is hurt, Nate Davis has been benched, Bill Murray's also out, Braxton Jones now has the knee injury. So there's a whole lot of what ifs and uncertainties with this offense right now.
Yeah, and it's just frustrating. Khalil Herbert was not active. That's something to kind of watch. Travis Homer was back, so they had him over Khalil Herbert. But yeah, I mean, they got Arizona next week. That's gonna be a tough one. Like Arizona, they're not a bad team, man. They're a scrappy, solid team. They had a come from behind win today over the Miami Dolphins, and they're gonna face a quarterback who can get out the pocket too, and he can make plays with his legs and can throw the football. So you have Arizona, you have New England coming up. We'll see if Drake May plays or not. He had a concussion today. And then you get into the division, man. You get into Green Bay. You got Minnesota, Detroit games. You have Seattle and San Francisco. Then 3 more with them. So we'll have to see. But the Bears are going to have to figure some things out. 4-3, it's tough because essentially now you have 2 games. One against the Colts that you should have had. That's a game you should win. Now this one kind of taken away from you. And, you could say, yeah, the Bears didn't deserve to win this game. I get it. That's the NFL. At the end, they had a chance to win the game. You can't apologize if you would have won that game. So they just have to kind of figure it out, and they have to find their identity in offense. I'm not worried about Caleb Williams. I do think the Commanders had a really good game plan for him. I think Dan Quinn is a really good defensive-minded head coach. I think Williams will be fine. I'm going to blur out and ignore the whole Williams and Daniels thing. It's not worth it. They're not linear. They both can be good. It's just we got to get over that. But yeah, man, the Bears are gonna have to come back next week with a big response. They're gonna have to win that game on the road, a tough game on the road, and then you have the Patriots at home. And if you can just get 6-3 going into those final 8 games, it'll be final 8 games. You could get to 6-3, you got a shot. I mean, you got a shot, but you got to get to 6-3, and you almost blew a chance now to get to 7-2, but whatever. But yeah, we'll have to see how this kind of shakes out. But you say before we kind of close things up, what was a bright spot for you in this game?
Well, just first adding on to your comment there, I mean, the Packers ended up winning today. The Lions have looked arguably really good these last 2 weeks. I would even argue that the Lions are better this year on offense than they were last year. And keep in mind that they're doing this without Aiden Hutchinson, pretty much putting up about 45 to 50 something points in back to back weeks. Granted, it's the Cowboys and Titans that are dealing with a little bit of adversity all on their own. The Vikings have played a pretty good start to pretty good couple of really good games this season. So, the Bears are all of a sudden, I mean, honestly, yes, all four of these NFC North teams have winning records so far, but I mean, it's very clear the Bears are actually the worst of the bunch. So there's a chance that this team misses out on the playoffs altogether. But no, I think to me, the bright spot was actually this is just you see, first, second to third quarter, the Bears and Caleb Williams really struggled. Fourth quarter is kind of where Caleb Williams turned it on and suddenly kind of found his group. You certainly saw a lot of footballs to Rome Udunze today as well, something that we really haven't seen the last couple of weeks. And then obviously, I think the big thing is this is just what we're seeing from Caleb to me is, and I talked about this on the Picks for Polls podcast as well, if you guys want to give that a listen, but what we're seeing from Caleb is just this sudden ascension. Week by week, he's getting better at something. Week by week, he's getting better at his command of the huddle, changing the calls at the line of scrimmage. His mechanics today were not necessarily the worst on the planet, but they weren't the greatest either, but they've been an improvement. You're seeing a quarterback that is starting to really understand how to play within the structure of the offense and not just have to go out all the time and play hero ball. Part of that comes down to his situational awareness, where, the USC Caleb Williams would have kind of tried to do anything and everything that he could when the pocket broke down. And he would have said, hey, I'm going to make something special happen. But the Chicago Bears Caleb Williams is looking at this thing and saying, all right, you know what? If it's not there, the first read's not there, second progression, third progression isn't there. I'm going to go to the check down. Okay, check down's not there. I got two defenders trailing me. I'm just going to go and get rid of the football, kind of move on, have that next play mentality. So you're seeing a lot of that, mental growth from Caleb that's sorely needed if he's going to continue to progress and get better.
Yeah, for me, a positive. Obviously, the defense is something that really stands out. This was the number one scoring offense in the NFL coming into this game, 31.1 points per game. The Commanders tied with Baltimore, actually. And the Bears held them to 12 for pretty much all of the game, and they got their touchdown on a last-second Hail Mary. So the defense, hats off to them. They did it without Kyler Gordon, without Jaquan Brisker. That's another two starters down in the secondary. I mean, that's impressive to me. I know they don't want no moral victories or anything like that, but you got to tip your hat to them on that. I also think DeAndre Swift, I think he's starting to get going, the long, explosive run. That was a good game for him again. So we'll see. I mean, I'm still encouraged. This one hurts. It's just how you lose this. I mean, if the Bears would have stalled and lost, would have been 12-7, I think people would have been a little more just, not as disappointed. It's just how you lose kind of makes it a little bit more, sting a little bit more. But you say where can everyone follow you at, and where can everyone read your work?
Yeah, guys, you can check me out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Usaid Koshul. Be sure to check out my work on the Bear Report website as well. Check out the Picks for Polls podcast too, where we do a lot of college football and NFL draft coverage as it pertains to the Bears.
Yes, and you can follow the Bear Report on Twitter at just Bear Report. You can follow me on Twitter at Zach, ZACK_Pearson. Please rate, review, subscribe on all major podcasting platforms. Helps us, helps Picks for Polls. Check out bearreport.com right now for some post-game stuff. Stop by the forums. Till next time, everyone, please stay safe and please stay healthy.